Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steves! On the My Channel, you know the deal, yo boy always keeps it real. Top 50 statue think the slate, dropping unrealistic man, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps shit real. The 24/7, 365 way, sports content for the reals to fill the day. Good afternoon, folks. Haha, yes, it started back in early spring of this year. And now, on the last Tuesday of the year, the night before New Year's Eve 2025, we are here for episode 41 of the 3-Point Blitz. But, hey, and we just going to keep this thing rolling. We got today's episode. We're going to keep this thing rolling into the new year next week with episode 42. And as always, we're doing this on the Hardcore Sports Network and the Nicky Steves channels. And as always, we kicking it. So, hooray, we got, last week we had the NBA and NFL on Christmas Day. We have the NFL Week 17 is in the books. And then we got Week 18 coming up, which means later tonight, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network, we got NFL Pick'ems with myself and Agent Warrior X at 8 p.m. on the Hardcore Sports Network. So stay tuned for that. But here on the 3-Point Blitz, we're going to start things off like we always do. with the per usual rant of the week. All right, folks, we got the rant of the week for you guys in this one, because we're going to talk now that I was thinking about for a second, but I saw something on IG yesterday. It was that made me want to talk about this. So I decided, you know what, let's discuss it. So I made a YouTube short out of it. It was from NBA Trade Center's IG page. Usually they do a lot of mock trades, and a few of the mock trades they put together I felt were unrealistic. And I'm just going to go through them, and that's what this rant's going to be about. So the risk started off this one. So this was from my YouTube short. I don't know if you guys can see the screen. Right here it has 4. So for this one right here, you start off the first mock trade in this one was a 3-team trade between Detroit Pistons, Golden State Warriors, and Dallas Mavericks. In this one, you had, for the Pistons, you had Draymond Green, Buddy Hield, Dante Exum going to the Pistons. In this one, then you had Anthony Davis, Mark Sasser going to the Warriors, and Jonathan Kuminga, Karis LeVert, Jaden Ivey, a 2030 first-round pick in this one. So start off with now, realistically, I don't see this 3-team trade happening. Now, granted, Karis LeVert, Jonathan Kuminga, Jaden Ivey would all be good pickups for the Mavericks, but realistically, I don't see this trade happening for this reason. I don't see the Warriors trading away Kuminga, and I don't see them trading away Draymond Green. And not as well as that. So one, there's the unrealistic part of it. Number 2, I don't see Draymond Green being a fit with the Pistons at all. We know Draymond Green's been excellent in Golden State, but here's the thing. If Draymond were to leave and go over to the Detroit Pistons from in a 3-team trade, I don't know how Draymond's going to fit in with that team in Detroit, because we know even through all the team success they had in Golden State, Draymond Green in recent years has become known more as a head case than he has an asset on the court. So I don't think that would be good for a Detroit Pistons team, especially a young team where a guy such as Draymond Green, who's known to get into it with players, most notably Jordan Poole, might come to Detroit if this were to happen within the attitude of he has seniority over everyone. He's the oldest guy on the team. He knows the most. He's been there for 4 championships. And then it might bode well and mesh well with his teammates. It might hurt the chemistry if a trade like this were to happen. So that's another reason I don't see this actually happening. And for the Warriors and Pistons, I don't think either side would want to agree to this. Maybe the Mavs would love this, but could you get the other 2 teams to agree to it? I don't think so. Now, this next one right here that was mock trade, and it's another unrealistic one. Cavs trading Darius Garland for DeMar DeRozan, Dario Saric, Keon Ellis, and 2 first-round picks, while the Sacramento Kings in a full-blown rebuild don't even get a pick in return. I mean, I understand the Cavs trying to retool, and I understand the Kings are in a full-blown rebuild, but if the Kings are going to do a trade, wouldn't you want to get picks in return? Why would you go for a trade where you have to give up picks and only get Darius Garland in return? What's that going to do for the Sacramento Kings going forward? So that alone already makes this unrealistic. Then for the Cavs, I kind of get it, but do you want to bring in too many guys? And then you've got this one right here. Trey Murphy to the Blazers, Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle, Milwaukee 2028, 2 future picks. Okay, I could see the Pelicans getting involved in a trade that involves picks, but I mean, this seems a little more realistic, but I don't see this happening either. And the last one was Colin Sexton, a Warriors 2026 second-round pick, a Charlotte future second. While Hornets would get is Mike Conley, Rob Dillinger, Leonard Miller. If the Hornets are going to trade in any way, shape, or form, realistically, it's going to be a trade that gets picks involved. That's not a realistic trade for the reason that the Hornets aren't getting picks in return. Charlotte Hornets are in a deep rebuild, and if they get any sort of, hold on a second. if they do any sort of trade, they're getting picks in return, okay? Trust me, the Charlotte Hornets ain't going to do that. So this just, I feel like the NBA Trade Center, even though some of these trades sound fun at first, they put out way too many unrealistic trades just for clickbait. Now, I get it. In the content creation world, you try to put out content out there, but eventually over time, the more unrealistic scenarios you propose, the more it weighs on people and the less people tune into what you have to say. And that's going to that could hurt your engagement in the long term, at least for me. But, some people love that. They like to talk about what ifs. But at the end of the day, what do what ifs really do? Besides feeling instant gratification to fill a subject. To me, it doesn't really do anything. So I think a lot of these trade scenarios, if we're going to have this talk, we got to be a little more realistic with this at least. I don't mind the mock trades and the proposals. It gets people talking. But if we're going to do that, can we at least get some trades that are a little more realistic and a little more likely to happen? I mean, now, if you're talking about a trade where say a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves give up some of their role players and a future pick to bring in LaMelo Ball and put him aside Anthony Edwards, okay, maybe that's a possibility. Or maybe a trade scenario where involving the Hornets and maybe a team like, say, the Milwaukee Bucks, maybe they're giving up some of their role players and future picks to bring in LaMelo to team him with Giannis. I mean, I'm not saying that's actually going to happen, but those would be more realistic proposed trade scenarios. So if we're going to do this, I'm perfectly okay with having this, but at least make the trade proposal a little more realistic. Like that trade with the Pistons, that 3-team trade, I don't see that happening. I don't see them giving up Karis LeVert, some of those guys, for Draymond Green, who most likely wouldn't. I don't see Draymond blending in well with the Pistons. So I think, look, I understand we like to talk about, especially once we get closer to the trade deadline, we're going to see more trades, but I would like to at least keep them more realistic. I mean, I know every proposed trade isn't going to happen, but at least try to be in the ballpark of something realistic with it. And that's really all I'm going to say. But we're going to move on. Let's go. Last Thursday was Christmas Day. And on Christmas Day, we have, of course, NFL versus the NBA. Let's talk about this a little bit. NFL versus the NBA games. Now, first off, from my standpoint, I enjoyed the NBA games more. Thought they were a lot more fun. You had the Knicks and Cavs had that thriller that came down to the last minute. Thunder and Spurs had a nice game. Lakers Rockets was kind of a blowout, and even Warriors Mavs was actually watchable. Not the best game in the world, but then you had the night game to close it off between the T-Wolves and Nuggets, which ended up being an excellent overtime game and a thriller there, where both Ant-Man and Nikola Jokic stole the show for their respective teams and made it a fun game. So I certainly enjoyed those games more than what we got with. We had Dallas, Washington. It was decent just for offensive highlights. And you had the Minnesota Vikings, Detroit Lions. Wasn't that great of a game. And Kansas City versus Denver was just meh. So I do say this. The NBA games I felt were more enjoyable. But here's the thing. Even though I personally as a fan enjoyed the NBA games more, let's be honest. The NFL games ratings have been doing phenomenal, especially the Netflix games on Christmas Day. I know last year we had the Steelers-Kansas City game did really good. It was $65 million in 2024. And then you had, you had that, and you also had the Texans and Ravens, $25 million. So especially on Netflix, the games on Netflix, which is such a major streaming network, they're doing excellent. They're doing excellent with those games. They did so last year, and still looking to see more reports about this year's ratings. But, man, I mean, obviously the NFL, even if I prefer, I lean more toward the NBA on Christmas, but the NFL is getting ratings off that. We saw that last year, And now here's the thing, though. However, and I haven't seen the official ratings yet, but a lot of the games aren't that interesting. So I'm thinking in the long term, the NFL with these competing against the NBA on Christmas Day might have a long-term problem, even though in the short term, the Netflix has been great for ratings. But here's the thing. The NFL, despite its short-term success with Netflix ratings and viewership, that's going to be a problem in the long term if they keep putting out uninteresting games like Steelers, Kansas City last year, which was kind of meh. This year, the 3 games really didn't deliver that much. So that could be a problem in the long term for the NFL. Even though in the short term, they did really great last year with the viewership. And this year, they probably did good with viewership. Considering the games aren't leaving fans satisfied, in the long term, that's going to be a problem for the NFL with their Christmas games on Netflix. Whereas the NBA has a well-established, successful tradition of playing of NBA games on Christmas. Throughout the years, NBA kind of was like the unofficial star of the season for some casual fans that struggled to get into the basketball early in the season. They kind of start following more around Christmas Day. Like we remember Lakers Heat 2004. That was like the Malice from the Palace was the first major story of that season, but the first like real interesting game of the season was Lakers Heat. And then we even seen the past games like, you had the Heat Lakers 2010, LeBron D. Wade in their first time. So the point being is the NBA has a long history of Christmas Day being the first real exciting day for games. Now, so I think in the long term, the NFL continues to put out those boring Christmas games like they have in recent years that fans aren't happy with. Eventually, the ratings are going to start to slowly dip on those Netflix games, and it's not going to be as successful a few years down the line. So while the NFL in the short term succeeding with viewership on this, in the long term, it might come back to haunt them. And it's not just that. The NFL for a while now hasn't really been putting out a lot of great Christmas games. We go back to 2023. You had Kansas City versus the Raiders, where the Raiders got the upset on them. And then the later game was the Eagles and Giants. That was both those games felt like disappointments from a fan standpoint. So personally, I lean more toward the NBA. I think for some NFL fans, if this continues, man, they're not going to be as interested in watching NFL games on Christmas Day in the long term. I mean, you'll still get people, obviously, they're going to watch because it is the NFL no matter what. It's just there's that right there. But for as far as I'm concerned, obviously, I think the NBA games are much more interesting because the NFL hasn't had the best luck with Christmas. But to be fair, there is this factor to consider too. When it comes to the NFL versus the NBA, it's easier for the NBA to put Christmas Day games to live up to the hype compared to the NFL. Because with the NFL, you're late in the season when you get around Christmas Day. You're around either week 16, week 17 when it comes time for those games. There's a good chance that when you have it, you're probably going to be in a situation where a lot of teams that might be dealing with injuries, some of the teams that started off the season really hot aren't doing as well, or teams that you thought would be really good don't deliver to expectations. Whereas with the NBA, it's early in the season. So you're not as likely to have as many major injuries. Plus, with the NBA, it's easier for teams to duplicate their success from the previous year than it is in the NFL. Because with the NFL, especially with it being such a physical sport, the risk of injury is higher in football. So that can play a factor. Plus, the strength of schedule that fluctuates from year to year, like how Washington went from last year having one of the easier schedules and making the playoffs and making a run to the conference championship to this year taking a step up in strength of schedule, plus injuries, they didn't play as well. See the Giants going from that 2022 run to the playoffs to 2023, 1 year after making it to the divisional round, they had a tougher schedule. The Giants didn't do so well, and they were put in a primetime Christmas game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So that sometimes plays a factor, whereas the NBA, it's a lot easier for teams to duplicate their success from the previous year. So when the NBA puts its Christmas schedule together, usually the games are more likely to deliver. Whereas the NFL, it's harder because teams aren't as likely to duplicate. Plus, it's later in the season, so you're more likely to deal with injuries in the later stage of the season, teams collapsing, etc. So I think that plays a factor in why the NBA's quality of games are better too. So that's that right there. But either way, the NFL is still going to get viewership on these Christmas games, especially with Netflix being a major streaming platform. People are going to tune in, especially people that are at home with their families, especially with football being the most popular sport in the NFL, being the most popular sporting organization in North America. You absolutely believe people are going to sit down and watch on Netflix, especially for family time. But at the end of the day, though, I mean, me personally, I lean more toward the NBA, but that's a fan preference. Some of you guys on here might do, some of you guys that follow me might do the same, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately just a fan preference. But with that being said, I'll say this. I did enjoy the NBA games more. Said the Knicks and Cavs was definitely a thriller that came down to the wire. The Cavs looked like they were winning at one point, but the Knicks made a second half comeback and ultimately took over the game and won. Then you also had the second game, you had the Spurs and Thunder. The Spurs beat the Thunder for the second time in a week, and now the Spurs are the only team that's consistently had the OKC Thunder's number through the early regular season. And the Spurs are looking like a dark horse to potentially be a team that might give the Thunder a run for their money in the playoffs. We saw the Houston Rockets beat the Lakers. Rockets had themselves, nice performance by the Rockets. Rockets are looking like, they're the number 6 seed at the moment. They could work their way up at any time. But plus, that's a tight Western Conference too. So going to see about that one. I mean, the Lakers kind of had an off night. Rockets got the better of them. And LeBron James, sometimes I feel like he's the biggest hypocrite in sports. He walks off the court without shaking anybody's hand. Like, he's this guy who 1 minute he seems real lovable. Then the next minute he does really stupid, like not shaking hands after a loss. And you think this is why it's hard to like the guy. And then you got that. But then you also had, even Mavs, Warriors, you had Cooper Flag at a solid performance, So we at least got something interesting. Then, of course, the night game, Thunder and Nuggets. That was not Thunder Nuggets. I'm sorry, Tim Tebow's and Nuggets, the Ant-Man, Nikola Jokic show. That ended up being a really fun game. Easily the best game on Christmas Day. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of us on the East Coast, it was a little too late for us to see it, but it was an enjoyable game. But, hey, man. So I was happier with the Christmas slate of games. And speaking of basketball, before we do move on, because I decided I'm going to change the formula a little bit this week, there's another subject I'm going to talk about before we dive into the NFL games, and that's just real quickly. Now, the WNBA players voted to strike. This was a big sports story. Now, apparently the thing was they weren't happy with the salary they were getting because they're only getting like about 2 to 3% of the league's total revenue, which now the WNBA isn't the most profitable organization, but apparently now there hasn't been an official strike put in play, but they voted with the players union in regards there could possibly strike, and we could see a lockout for the WNBA, kind of similar to what happened where, remember years back, the NHL went on strike. Now, I don't know if it's going to be quite like that, or it could be like there was a brief lockout from the NBA back in 2011 where they started on Christmas Day that year. I mean, we could see something like that, but all I'm going to say is this. I get where the players are coming from. Now, for some people, some people you get two people with sports fans, those that defend the athletes, want more money, and some of them that say, oh, you guys are greedy, you get paid more than the average person. Now, with this one, I get where the players are coming from because remember, the women don't get paid that much on average compared to their male counterparts. especially in the WNBA, which is still, while it's not the most appealing sports league, it's not for everybody, it's still one of the more popular leagues in North America, and it's been growing its revenue in recent years, especially with the arrival of Caitlin Clark, and some of these players aren't getting anywhere near the same share. So I get for the WNBA players, some of them have to play overseas during the offseason just to keep income going. So I understand why they want more money and more of the revenue for themselves, especially because some of them do have endorsement deals still. You still got, Cameron Brink has the endorsement deal with Dix. You still have Caitlin Clark has a deal, and some of these other players have deals. So I get from their standpoint, because remember, the women don't make as much as the men do in the NBA or NFL players. So I get where they're coming from. I wouldn't necessarily call this greedy on their part, because when they compare to what other people are making, they're like, hey, why aren't we doing that? Now, obviously, the WNBA, look, it's not as popular as the NBA. The NBA is always going to be the more popular leagues, always going to have more mainstream appeal. So I'm not expecting the WNBA to ever be on par, but they're going to probably continue to grow to some extent. You're going to have expansion team Philly and Toronto, so it's going to increase in popularity. So I understand as that's happening, the players want more revenue. And considering they don't get paid as much, I get where they're coming from. So I'll say that. I know Coach Ed, my compadres, he'll be paying attention to that. I know Next Shift Randy, if he's still around doing videos, he'll be paying attention to the WNBA. They'll probably have some more content about it. So with that being said, now we're going to move on to the traditional talking about the NFL. Now we're going to move on, talk about the NFL, do some recaps of the game. So I decided this week to do with the formula a little differently, I feel like, because sometimes after a while, the formula does get stale doing it the same way every week. So I decided to talk about the Christmas games a little bit first, talk briefly about the WNBA strike, because it does have one of the more interesting subjects outside the on-the-field aspects of sports. So decided to do that to mix it up a little bit. Now we're going to dive into the NFL and the Christmas games, starting with the Christmas games. This one, let's see, Cowboys, Commanders. I mean, it was at least a good offensive battle, at least. There were points scored and at least made the game somewhat competitive. Unfortunately, this was between a struggling defense and a team who's disappointed all season long. But at least for those that are fans of offense, we at least got something out of this game. So it wasn't a complete waste. You did have Jacurri Messett, the rookie running back for the Washington Commanders, had a really good game fantasy-wise, so I was at least happy with that. Dak had a few touchdown passes, looked solid in this one, but unfortunately for the Cowboys, this came after a 3-game skid, including one loss to the Detroit Lions, which, ironically, you really think about it, the Cowboys probably should have won that game when you look at what's happened with the Detroit Lions lately. But the Cowboys win against the garbage Commanders, so they get the win, but this really doesn't do anything. And honestly, for Cowboys fans, just ask yourself, does this honestly do anything for you? Honestly, does a win over the Washington Commanders at this phase of the season actually do anything for you, knowing you're already out of the playoffs? You lost to the Lions, who got embarrassed by the Vikings, the Chargers, and who else was? They lost to them, and there was the other loss. Who was it to again? It was the Chargers, Lions. If anyone remembers, you could comment in the chat who that other loss was to. But you had some of those losses right there, and they had even an embarrassing loss to the Carolina Panthers, who were just an odd team this season. So I feel like it was all for nothing at this point, but somebody had to win the game. At least Cowboy fans got something for Christmas to make them feel good for the rest of the day. So I guess good for them in that regard. And for Washington, the sooner Sunday comes and their season's over, the better for them. Moving right along, Vikings versus Lions. I swear that I feel both teams lost this game. And the reason why I say that is because the Minnesota Vikings had to start Max Brosmer again because J.J. McCarthy's injured. Folks, I'm seriously, this is, if you're a Vikings fan, this has got to be a concern because you talk J.J. McCarthy, strike one, he missed his whole rookie year. Strike two, got injured early in the season. Strike three, he's missing time late in the season. So that's two separate injuries that caused him to miss time. Oh, wait, technically three if you actually think about it. Because I guess they rushed him back and he re-injured himself. So that's a real concern for the Vikings in the long term. Now, granted, J.J. McCarthy was starting to play decent in recent games, but all these injuries, he's starting to look more like J.J. Bradford or Sam McCarthy all over again with lower ceiling entering the league, basically. With all these injuries, I swear. It's like Sam Bradford with lower ceiling, reincarnated. And that's got to be a big concern for the Vikings going forward, even in victory and knocking the Lions out of the playoffs. So there's that. And for the Detroit Lions, oh boy. I'll say this. For this week, I noticed a theme going on throughout this week. You got quarterbacks who play solid, who are considered good quarterbacks overall, but when it matters most and there's pressure put on them, they can't deliver. And Jared Goff is one of them. I've noticed that trend with him, especially in Detroit. And even with the Rams, Jared Goff can play good when there's no expectations. But then as soon as all the pressure in the world's on them in a crucial game, such as a Super Bowl and Super Bowl 53 with the Rams, the playoffs, as with the Rams and the Lions, or an elimination game, Jared Goff folds. And not only that, but the Detroit Lions as a team folded here with 6 turnovers against a mediocre Vikings team. And this season's been a complete disappointment. And now you got to start to wonder, I think the narratives about Dan Campbell just being a fun coach are starting to return a little bit. You remember early on the narrative was Dan Campbell's a fun coach, but not really a good coach. Then they had those 2 really good seasons. It went away. Now you're starting to wonder if it had more to do with Ben Johnson. You got to wonder if those narratives are starting to come back. I'm just saying, I'll keep an eye. Obviously, Dan Campbell's not getting fired at all, no. But I would keep an eye out to see what they do next year. If they don't turn it back around next year, you might have to have that long-term conversation. So I feel like, honestly, this was a lose-lose for both teams. Even for the Vikings. And all right, let's get this over with. So the Denver Broncos won. Congratulations. You clinch your division with what happened Saturday, which I'll talk about in a minute. But, and to one thing, I'll say this. To all the people that said Patrick Mahomes was a system quarterback who benefited most from Andy Reid. Have you seen what Kansas City's done without Patrick Mahomes? Matter of fact, in their last 5 games without Patrick Mahomes, they've averaged 7 points in those last 5 games without Mahomes. Now, granted, one of them was a regular season game last year, the final week, when they had nothing to play for and they were resting their starters. But to that whole narrative that Andy Reid can just swap in quarterbacks and get the best out of them, well, obviously that's not the case with Kansas City over the past couple of years, because their last 5 games without Mahomes, they've averaged 7 points. So let's put that narrative to rest. Obviously, not everybody can go in under Andy Reid's system and play good. And for Denver, hey, they got to win as expected. But I noticed a funny trend about Denver. When they're playing struggling teams like the Raiders or Kansas City, they seem to play down and make it more competitive. But then when they step up against mediocre or good teams, Denver plays up to its abilities. I've noticed that trend. Because it seemed like teams like the Raiders, Kansas City, they play close. And then all of a sudden against good teams like the Packers, they play up to their abilities all of a sudden. But either way, the Broncos are finding ways to win now. Just curious to see how that carries over into the playoffs. But now, interesting question for who's going to get home field advantage entering week 17 or week 18. And we'll look at playoff clinching scenarios later on in the show. But I'm just going to step aside. I just got to grab a sip of water. I'll be right back in 1 second. Then we'll talk about the Saturday games and keep going from there. All right, and right back, folks, at it. Just a quick water break right here, and we're getting right back to it. So we're going to start to get right into the Saturday games. We start with the Houston Texans continuing their wave of momentum from that 3-5 start to now being one of the top teams in the AFC and actually looking like a juggernaut. And they continue that momentum, defeating the Los Angeles Chargers in a game that I felt was the true test game. Because the Texans, throughout most of their winning streak, have not been. With all due respect, they've played a lot of struggling teams, excluding, say, the Jaguars, who they swept. But in this game, they played against a good team in the Chargers, who were 11-4 coming into this. And the Texans took care of business and did what they had to. And I'll say this about the Texans. I would even go as far as to say that they are I would almost say that they're the Houston Eagles in this one. And the reason why is because there were parallels here between the Texans' victory over the Chargers and the Eagles' victory over the Bills. And here's the parallel. Both teams started off the first half strong offensively. They didn't do so great offensively in the second half, referring to the Eagles and Texans in their respective wins, but their defenses played excellent throughout the game. So that's where I'd draw the parallels between the two teams' respective victories. Now, with the Texans, C.J. Stroud started off. He had 2 touchdown passes in the first half, and they came in within the first couple of minutes on fire. It was looking like it was going to be a repeat of the wild card round last year, the way the Texans scored on them the first couple drives. But then, to be fair, the Chargers did get a field goal to make it 14-3 going into the half. And it's like, okay, it's not over yet. The Texans offense didn't score anything after those first couple drives. Then the second half, all of a sudden, it was 17-10 after the third. And it was like, okay, going into the fourth quarter, the Chargers still had an opportunity to do something. But in the fourth quarter, the Texans held on. They minimized the Chargers' efficiency. Even Cameron Dicker missed a field goal, which came in crucial later in the game. But I got to say, I give the Texans credit. They said in the third quarter, they held them to a couple 3-and-outs. And in the fourth quarter, they actually managed to keep the Chargers to only 2 offensive drives, a punt and a touchdown. So it was actually – so the Texans actually did a really good job defense shutting down the Chargers. And they actually they did control time possession, kept them to a lot of quick drives, which played a huge role. And while we're on that subject, coming from an Eagles fan, shout out to Derek Barnett, the former Eagle. He got himself 2 sacks on this game. So Derek Barnett showed up for this game. I'll at least got to give him props on that one there. And hey, the Texans, hey, they keep finding ways to win, and they're hot at the right time of the season. They're hot going into the playoffs, so I can't say anything bad about them. For the Chargers, it's a tough loss, and they're in the playoffs, but considering they lost to the Houston Texans, who do still technically have a shot at their division, that raises questions about the Chargers come playoff time, because we've seen this exercise play out before with Justin Herbert led teams in the playoffs. I mean, whether or not you say it's the team around him, it's Herbert, it's both, the bottom line is, in the Justin Herbert era, they do struggle to win games come playoff time, and you're starting to see that play out again. And speaking of teams with concern, I said when Micah Parsons went down with that injury that the Packers defense were like the Bulls without Michael Jordan. Still a solid unit, but we're missing the key piece that made them a threat. And that's exactly, well, in the Packers defense, they didn't even look like that in this one. The Packers still had a solid, on paper, still had a solid defense without Parsons. So you would have thought, okay, maybe they'll show up here. Maybe they'll show up, but nope. The Ravens offense, they gave Derrick Henry the ball, and he was like a Mack truck just running over people. It was like playing an auto racing game with a Mack truck that just bulldozes over all the competitors. It's like a Need for Speed race where you just crash into other cars and take them out that way. That's what Derrick Henry's running was like in this one. Just power running all over the Green Bay Packers defense. And boy, did the Packers defense look dead in this one. But now, okay, now the narratives might form that because Jordan Love missed the game and Malik Willis had a solid showing, 2 scrambling touchdowns and 1 passing touchdown, 18 for 21 passing, that, oh boy, Jordan Love's a system quarterback. Guys, let's not get quite there just yet. Now, I do feel Jordan Love is a game manager as opposed to a true star quarterback, but as far as Malik Willis goes, I give him credit. He had a good game, but we're talking one game, folks. And I'll say this might be an unpopular take in the moment, but I don't think Malik Willis should get a big contract in the offseason. I understand if a team, but personally, if I were an NFL owner and I was looking for a quarterback desperately and was struggling to trade up to get one in the draft, I would offer Malik Willis a 1-year prove-it deal. Like maybe a team like the Miami Dolphins could offer Malik Willis a 1-year prove-it deal. And if he goes out to Miami and say balls out, or maybe a team like Indianapolis, if they don't think Daniel Jones can be the same guy, maybe he gets a 1-year prove-it deal. If he does ball out, maybe he gets an extension. But I would give him a prove-it deal first during the offseason. And this also goes to tell you what I've said throughout the whole season. You can't blame a team's success or failure solely on the quarterback. You remember Malik Willis in Tennessee, didn't really have much to work with. And now he goes to Green Bay. He has a more stable system with Matt LaFleur as the coach, and he actually looks like he could have potential as an NFL quarterback. So that goes to show you can't solely expect one of the quarterback to make or break a team. It's a team. Look at Geno Smith in Seattle versus him with the Raiders. They look like 2 different quarterbacks. Look at Malik Willis during that brief stint in Tennessee with nothing going versus Green Bay Packers. Look at Steve Young on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in the late 80s versus his run on the 49ers. The point being is you can't expect the quarterback solely to make or break a team. It doesn't work like that. And Malik Willis's performance is proof of that. That you see with actual system around him, Malik Willis is actually a pretty solid quarterback. You see Sam Darnold, when he actually plays with a team with structure, he's actually a solid quarterback. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So I will give Malik Willis credit on that. But for the Packers, and they clinched the playoffs with the Lions losing, but This is not an inspiring performance for them to actually be a contender. At this point, the Packers look like they're likely to be a one-and-done team. And for the Baltimore Ravens, I'll just say this. You're lucky you're still in contention. Let's just put it that way. You are lucky because the team who you originally replaced, the new Cleveland Browns, saved your asses and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. What do I say about this one, honestly? It feels like this was rigged. It feels like it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm really trying to figure this one out. How did this game end up being such a horrific game and the Browns ended up winning? I mean, this game was the quality of the Browns' brown jerseys. Seriously. This was just a dreadful game. I mean, seriously. Just Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers looked like crap. I mean, did someone pay them to throw this game? Because that's the only reasonable explanation. Outside of that, this makes no sense. Did the Steelers just play down their competition in usual Mike Tomlin fashion? I mean, okay, that was a stupid question because the answer is obviously yes, they did. They played down. I mean, Jesus Christ, this looked like a Cordell Stewart-led Pittsburgh Steelers going against, I don't know, say, oh, shoot, who? I mean, this looked like a Cordell Stewart-led Pittsburgh Steelers, say, against the Ravens 2000 defense with the Steelers. Honestly, that's what it looked like. I swear. I don't get it at all, but that means, though, that next week it'll be Ravens and Steelers, AFC North title on the line. That'll be more interesting Saturday game. Moving right along, while I'm still kind of on the subject of teams, quarterbacks moving to new teams succeeding, let's take a look. Seattle Seahawks beat the Carolina Panthers. Now, this wasn't the best game in the world, but Seattle Seahawks got it done. And remember what I said earlier about how the theme of the week was quarterbacks who play well when there's no expectations versus when there's pressure and expectations, they struggle. See Bryce Young. Bryce Young, when there's no pressure on him, he ends up doing pretty solid. But when there's expectations on him, it's just nothing really. I mean, in this game, he was dreadful. I mean, only 14 for 24, 54 yards and a pick. What? Wait, what? When I thought Bryce Young was coming along and starting to break out into his own, and he has to some degree, but man, was this awful. I mean, geez Louise. And Sam Darnold, again, I'll say this. Man, Sam Darnold had another multi-turnover game. He had an interception and a lost fumble. So it's like, look, the Seahawks are playing winning football, but Sam Darnold's another quarterback who I feel like ultimately isn't going to deliver in the clutch. I mean, I don't know. That's just me right there on that one. But it's interesting now because Sam Darnold had himself a bit of an achievement here in this one that I'll show you guys it in a second. Sam Darnold did manage to pull off a pretty interesting achievement. So now Sam Darnold now becomes one of a handful of quarterbacks to have 13 win seasons. So let's take a look at this graphic right here. I'll show it to you guys. So Mr. Sam Darnold had, hold on, wait. So here we go. Give me 1 second. This was what Sam Darnold, though, despite that, and now with the Seahawks win, Sam Darnold enters this category, QBs with consecutive 13-win seasons with Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, and Brett Favre. Now, that looks pretty impressive on paper, but I'll put it this way. That's like from the stretch of 1995 to 2000 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks with John Elway, Troy Aikman, Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, and Trent Dilfer. Sam Darnold in this category with Brady, Rodgers, Manning, and Favre, he's like the Trent Dilfer of that category between like all the Aikmans, Elways, back-to-backs, Favres, Warners, and then Trent Dilfer winning Super Bowls in that stretch. Trent Dilfer was the weakest link of that bunch, and I feel like in this case, though, Sam Darnold's kind of like, in this scenario with consecutive 13-win seasons, Darnold would be like the Trent Dilfer of that scenario in this one here with QBs with consecutive 13-win seasons, which, not saying that's a knock, that's actually an impressive accomplishment. And he did so with back-to-back years with different teams. And you went one year, he did it with the Vikings. Now he went to the Seahawks and did it again. Sam Darnold was a contributor to it, no doubt. But I don't feel like he's the main reason it happened, though. But the Seahawks, though, I say this, Seahawks are a really good team, though. And they did what they had to. They shut down the Carolina Panthers, who, and let's be honest, they kind of exposed the Panthers as a pretty mid team that's winning a crappy division. And now the Panthers will have to play next week to try to win their division against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thanks to the Buccaneers' loss, the Panthers are still winning that division. But I'll say this first, to be fair. Seahawks 49ers next week, that's a game we're looking forward to. We'll get to that more later. And for the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield following the weekly trend of quarterbacks who play good when the deck's stacked against them or there's no expectations, but as soon as there's some pressure on them, they struggle. Baker Mayfield did that, just as Jared Goff did, and just as Bryce Young did. And that was the theme going throughout this week. So, what do I say? Buccaneers, you really don't deserve to win your division. I don't care what happens week 18. You honestly don't deserve to win the division the way they played. And if the Buccaneers somehow beat the Panthers and win that division with an 8-9 record, that'll be the second time in 5 years they've done it with an under 500 record, which really tells you about how much that NFC South is a dumpster fire division. And for the Dolphins, I mean, I got to say, what does a win do for the Miami Dolphins? Honestly. No offense to Big C from the Sunday morning show, but what does a win actually do for the Dolphins? Really? I just feel like this game was just real generic and bland. I think this says more about the Buccaneers than it does the Dolphins and how far they've fallen off. Going from 6-2 to 7-9, that's an epic collapse. I mean, at least with the Colts, when they did it, which I'll get to that in a second, they have the excuse of Daniel Jones getting injured. But for the Bucs, what's the excuse? I get injuries to the offensive line, but losing to the Saints twice, losing to the Saints, getting beat by the Dolphins, what's the excuse for that? You had a healthy quarterback. You had some healthy weapons on offense. What's the excuse for that? I don't know. But with that being said, though, that just means that for the Panthers and Bucs, the division will be on the line next week, and we'll just have to see what happens. Moving right along, Patriots and Jets. All right, let's just say this. To me, this week, this game, and what ended up happening with the Rams last night on Monday Night Football, which I'll get to in a minute, this solidified the New England Patriots as the particularly Drake May as the MVP lock for me. I'll say this. I got Drake May as the lock for regular season MVP after this performance. I'll just leave it at that. Oh, boy. I mean, just what can I say? Just what a... Oh, my goodness. I mean, Patriots did their usual thing. Drake May looked like an MVP, and for the Jets, they just I need to just delete the franchise, seriously. And for the Bates, congratulations. Now we just got to see how the standings play out with them and the Broncos. Moving right along, I mean, the Jaguars, it was a shaky start for them, but the Jaguars found a way to win. Now, Trevor Lawrence didn't have his best performance in this one, which to me sends me back to the narrative of, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that true franchise dude. He plays good at times, and if he gets hot, the Jaguars can benefit from it, but he didn't continue his streak of multi-touchdown games in this one. That came to an end, but the Jaguars still found a way to win. And for the Colts, man, all I'm going to say for the Colts is, oh, man, what a shame. I mean, I think even though I know Daniel Jones was injured, you had to rely on Phillip Rivers, but to go from 7-1 to 8-8 missing out, something else went wrong beside Daniel Jones' injury. I think the Colts probably let the 7-1 start get to their head. They thought they were better than they really were, and they got a little bit ahead of themselves. And ultimately, I think that played a role in their collapse, as well as the Daniel Jones injury. They just got ahead of themselves when they were 7-1, thought they were the best thing in the NFL, and other teams took them more seriously. They didn't take the games as seriously anymore, and boom, it all fell apart. But the Jaguars, they're winning games at the right time. Now we just got to see. We got the Jaguars, Titans, and Texans, Colts. If the Jaguars and Texans both win, Jags win the division. If the Jags somehow lose to the Titans and the Texans win, then Texans win the division. But we'll have to see on that one. This next one now, I will say this. To be fair, this ended up actually being a more interesting game than you would think. You would think this was just a boring snooze fest, and it wasn't quite that. You actually did have Cam Ward actually looked like a decent quarterback in here. He threw 2 touchdowns. The team still lost and gave up a first-half lead, but hey, at least Cam Ward in a game against a struggling Saints team actually looked solid in this one, which you would expect from a rookie quarterback to improve and get better as the season goes along. Even if it's not resulting in wins at the moment, at least Cam Ward's individual play has improved, and at least there's some hope for improvement year 2. But to be fair, that's kind of similar to what happened to Eli Manning his rookie year at the Giants, where he struggled early on. As the season went along, Eli did play better. And even in a game against the Steelers, who went 15-1 that year with rookie Big Ben, the Giants made it competitive, and Eli actually played solid even in loss. So I feel like you're seeing something a little bit similar. And if you're a Titans fan, you're hoping it plays out that way. And for the Saints, hey, I give them credit for coming back. I mean, I know it's only the Tennessee Titans, but Tyler Show did manage to throw 2 touchdown passes and help them out in the second half. So even if it was against the Titans, a win's a win. In the Saints, they've been playing better in recent weeks. Even on an easy schedule, they're finding ways to at least win. And you're starting to realize, okay, maybe Kellen Moore might actually be a halfway decent coach. Maybe. I'll give him next year, see what he does next year. Tyler Show, I got to still see what he does next year. But at least in this one, we got a high-scoring game, and the offenses actually managed to do something. So this wasn't a complete snooze fest. So the Saints won the game, but the Titans ultimately win the tank. If the Titans invest right in the draft, this could be a blessing in disguise one day down the line. In this next game, okay. All right, Arizona Cardinals. The sooner their season's over, the better. We'll just say that. They could fire Jonathan Gannon, move on, start fresh, and just hope that this time the front office finally gets it right. They finally fire a head coach that's competent. I mean, we'll see on that one. But for the Cardinals, the sooner it's over, the better. For the Bengals, all right, Joe Burrow took out his frustrations on an Arizona Cardinals team. The Bengals offense looks solid. Good for them. At least there's some hope for that offense, but their defense still needs a lot of work in the offseason. And you just realize, though, too, with the Bengals, you wonder if Burrow just stayed healthy, what could have been? This is ultimately the what could have been team of the 2025 season beat with the dumpster fire in the NFC West. I'll just put it that way. So impressive performance by Burrow just gives you that what if he would have stayed healthy all season vibe. Bengals win, Cardinals lose. We'll take a quick step aside for a quick second. I'll be right back. Then we'll talk about the Eagles Bills, the Tank Bowl, the primetime games. So stay tuned. Your boy will be right back. We'll talk about it in just a minute.
I could see at least two teams missing out with a winning record. Houston and Kansas City.
Really, it's going to be a battle of the two offenses in this case. So I predict a high-scoring game.
This is what they get for firing Brian Flores. You remember that 2021 season when the Dolphins won 7 in a row with Brian Flores just to get booted out of the playoffs and then terminated on Black Monday. Why would they even do that?
Offseason in terms of talent wise, when they got Tyreek Hill, so they had the right talent the following year. If they had the exact same offseason with Brian Flores as the coach, how much different would have it gone? I don't know if we necessarily
would have been way different if Brian Flores.
It would have been better.
It would have been different with Brian Flores because he has a winning culture defense, but the offensive was pretty much god awful.
Back in, like, say, Madden, the original Madden 25 franchise mode, it would have been generated during one of the off seasons. You get a random, like, Kurt Warner coming out of retirement or Ray Lewis coming out of retirement storyline. I'm back, and that's going to be later tonight, exclusively on the Hardcore Sports Network with myself, Agent Warrior X, where we'll be doing NFL pick'ems for Week 18, as well as doing some recap of the Week 17 matchups, where I'll reiterate some of my points. Agent Warrior X will get to provide his points. If anyone's just coming in, if you haven't done so, leave a comment in the chat, show your support. It would be appreciated. As we get back to this, let's talk about first. So my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, beat the Buffalo Bills and did so. I said, like, it's what I said about the Houston Texans. I said that the Houston Texans ultimately won in a game that Houston Texans ultimately won against the Los Angeles Chargers, where their offense started off really hot, but ultimately did not do that great in the second half, but their defense stepped up big time. The exact same thing happened with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills. The offense started off hot in the first half. They managed to get down the field and have 3 scores. They didn't get anything going in the second half, but the Eagles defense stepped up and did what they needed to. You started off, I'll say this about the Eagles. They won because of talent. But ultimately, the poor offensive play calling got back to them in the second half. And I got to say this. I'm actually going to put up a poll question real quick. If anybody, I'm going to ask you a comment. If anyone's in here, I want to ask you guys a question. Is Kevin Patullo holding this Eagles offense back? Is he? Because I want to know right there if you guys think. Do you think Kevin Patullo is truly holding this Eagles offense back? Because this is just, it doesn't make sense that even with a win on the road against an 11-4 team, we still lead this game with a somewhat bitter taste despite the win. Isn't that a weird situation? Because, look, here's the thing, man. I mean, we won this game, and our defense played great. The Eagles' defense was great in this one. Took a really good offense in the Buffalo Bills and shut them down. They sacked Josh Allen 5 times throughout the game. And they managed, the Buffalo did start to come back and score some points. They scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth, which in part was because the Eagles' offense couldn't get anything going in the second half. And eventually, the defense gets burnt out. And they did enough to hold them off in this one, particularly a 4th and goal stop, which prevented the Bills from scoring in the second half, which ultimately they did end up scoring later. So it didn't stop. So it did it, but that 1 4th and goal stop did stop the Buffalo Bills from winning this game. And so did a 2-point conversion stand where they forced Josh Allen to make an absolute absurd throw. And the Eagles held off. So I give this defense credit, especially under pressure where the offense couldn't get moving in the second half. They did manage to hold them back, but so at least the Eagles defense was excellent in this one. You still see Vic. Remember when we as Eagles fans, some of us thought that Vic Fangio wasn't the right guy to be the Eagles, the defensive coordinator. Well, now you see with the Eagles, yeah, that's not the case. Vic Fangio has been phenomenal. He's lights out. I mean, Vic Fangio has been lights out this season for them, but hey, the Eagles found ways to win this game. I mean, you got 5 sacks on Josh Allen. You held him to only 12 points. That's really good, including a key 4th down stop, plus a blocked extra point, which actually may have been the reason why Buffalo went for 2. If it weren't for that blocked extra point, you're talking 13-7. Then the final touchdown makes it 13-13. Bills probably just go for the extra point right there and win it in regulation. So give credit to Jalen Carter for that blocked extra point. That may have been the play that actually saved this game, as well as the 4th down stop. So this defense gets a ton of credit. They were really crucial, especially in that second half. And for Buffalo, I got to say this. That narrative that, Josh Allen can finally win because he doesn't have Kansas City and Cincinnati standing in his way come playoff time. Are you sure about that? Because it always seems like when the games are important and when it comes big game time, Josh Allen usually struggles to get it done. Honestly, I see Josh Allen as that type of quarterback that he's going to have a lot of good regular seasons. He'll consistently get Buffalo to the playoffs, but I don't think Josh Allen's the guy that's going to win a Super Bowl. I just don't see that happening. So, yeah, I don't see him as a Super Bowl winning quarterback. But the Eagles hold on, get the win. They had no offensive turnovers, which was good, but the play calling in the offense has got to be able to play for 4 quarters against a good team. And then we get to the fun game of it. The Super Tank Bowl! Oh, yeah, this was a lot of fun. The Super Tank Bowl. We haven't seen a Tank Bowl this magnitude since the Miami Dolphins, Cincinnati Bengals, late 2019, or the 49ers Texans week 17 of the 05 season. This was indeed a truly special Tank Bowl. And for the Las Vegas Raiders, this serves them right. They went to get Pete Carroll, who was showing signs of decline as a coach late in his tenure in Seattle. Pete Carroll comes to the Raiders, tries to recreate the later years of Seattle. And he decides, hey, let's bring back Geno Smith. Well, Pete Carroll, you don't have the exact same structure you had in place in Seattle, so it isn't going to work that way. And Geno Smith versus the Seattle Seahawks was a respectable game manager versus him with the Raiders. He looks like skinny Jamarcus Russell. I mean, that's really what it's been with Geno Smith thus far. He looks like Jamarcus Russell in shape, kind of. If you ever wondered what would happen if Jamarcus Russell was in shape, this is what would happen. And for the Giants, oh my gosh. I swear, the one time, I can't wait for Pick'ems tonight because I want to know what Agent Warrior X is going to think about this one. Why? Jackson Dart ended up having his best game in a game that Giants fans actually wanted them to lose to get a top pick. Oh, gosh. And for the Raiders, I'll say this. At least credit to Geno Smith. He got the assignment. He played like he released a Jamarcus Russell type performance to help make sure that the Raiders had improved their odds of securing the number 1 pick. And the Giants, I swear, the Giants and Browns, now I think about it, they're not the only team. The Browns also ruined their tank. The Giants especially. I mean, I guess at least with the Giants in this one, you can at least say their performance in this one, particularly Jackson Dart, at least gives this team some hope for the future. Like, at least Jackson Dart, when in a favorable situation, which unfortunately for his rookie season, that's against a dumpster fire team, but at least in a favorable situation, lucky for Giants fans, he can do something. For the rest of the NFC's fan base, particularly Eagles fan base, we're just lucky that one situation Dart could do something was against the Raiders. I mean, what a this is just comical right here. Oh boy, if we still had VHS tapes, this would be on the NFL Follies films. You guys know about them, right? Back in the old VHS days, there were these NFL Folly films from like the 70s and 80s with all these bloopers, all these horrific plays. It was just, but in this game, the Giants actually won in a game that was meaningless. But the Raiders win the tank, and real quickly, let's take a look at, okay, what would be the 2026 NFL mock draft, just to see the order. Let's see, is there anything? Let's see a mock draft, just to see what it looks, just see what the ranking, just see who would pick where right now. So, all right, let's just see the ratings, shall we? So as of right now, actually, the Raiders would have the number one pick as a result. So here's what it would look like. You would have Raiders would get 1, Giants 2, Jets 3, Titans 4, Cardinals 5, Browns 6, Commanders 7, Saints 8. So the Saints have really screwed themselves, and Browns really screwed themselves out of the tank, especially the Saints winning in recent weeks. And you see the Dolphins have screwed themselves over, falling to the 11th. And that's where the standings stand as of today with the tank race. So the Raiders, at least in that regard, did their job. They tanked epically. Urinating Tree would be proud of this one. I mean, what the hell, dude? Seriously? Oh my gosh, y'all. But the Giants win the game. All I can say is poor Ashton Genty stuck on this team. Hopefully for his sake, he can get in a better situation soon. Now, we go from that to a night game that actually did deliver. A night game that actually felt like a heavyweight bout between two top teams in the NFC, with the San Francisco 49ers and Chicago Bears. Two teams fighting for momentum headed into the playoffs. And this game did not disappoint. A spectacular offensive showing by both teams and a potential playoff preview. We could see this either in the divisional or even possibly conference championship, possibly. But the 49ers now, having beat the Chicago Bears and with the Rams losing to the Falcons, the 49ers might have a shot at home field advantage potentially, which I'll get to the playoff. We'll look at the playoff clinching scenarios for week 18 in a minute, but I got to say about this one. Look, Brock Purdy, I say what you want to say about him. Now, I think Brock Purdy's always been a good quarterback. And I would say this, out of all the quarterbacks that aren't considered elite, that are considered good, like Brock Purdy, for example, like the guys like the Brock Purdys, the Tuas of the world, guys that are considered game managers, I feel like Purdy has the best shot of winning a Super Bowl out of those bunch, especially with the way the Niners have been playing in recent weeks. They're not missing a beat at all. It's like the injuries early in the season feel like a non-factor the way the Niners are winning games, and now they're sitting at 12-4, and a win over the Seahawks puts them at 13-4, and they win. They could get home field advantage in the playoffs potentially. And they really showed up on offense in this game against Chicago Bears. Brock Purdy had 3 touchdowns. You had McCaffrey had over 100 yards on 23 carries, close to 150. And he had a touchdown there. Purdy even had 2 scrambling touchdowns. I mean, this was just all around excellent offensive performance by the Niners. And knowing their history, they could make a deep playoff run, possibly a Super Bowl run again. Don't be surprised. And for the Chicago Bears, I can't even say anything bad about them. Sure, they fell short in this game, but they did put up a respectable fight. They were just outmatched by a better team in this one. Caleb Williams, he showed that he has some deep throw accuracy too. He had 2 touchdowns. Even DeAndre Swift had 2 touchdowns on 9 carries. So the Bears offense still showed up, and you see the Ben Johnson effect even in defeat that this has. So this is one of those games for a team that's in its first year of a rebuild to greatly exceed expectations and put up a valiant fight against a now Super Bowl contender in the NFC and the Niners. That's a respectable accomplishment by the Bears, even in defeat. And don't be surprised if we potentially see a rematch in the playoffs, potentially. But congrats to the Niners and credit to the Bears for showing up, and looking forward to seeing what happens with that 49ers-Seahawks game come Week 18. And to close out the Week 17 recap, let's talk about this. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons, I'll say this. I feel like this was a lose-lose for both teams because on one hand, for the Falcons, even in victory, this has turned into a what-if scenario. The way the Falcons lit up the scoreboard, particularly in the first half against the Rams, Bijan Robinson, the way he played, it just feels like, what if they didn't get swept by the Panthers? What would have happened then? Possibly the Falcons would be in contention to win the NFC South. So the Falcons ultimately screwed themselves out of it. And I feel like even in victory against the Rams, it's still kind of like a bittersweet victory because it felt nice to beat one of the better teams in the NFC, but ultimately there's still that what if. What if the Falcons just won some of those close games they lost? They could have potentially been, NFC South champs. And Troy Aikman actually said that perfectly last night on Monday Night Football. And for the Rams, I'll say this. Matthew Stafford, to me, pretty much gave Drake May the regular season MVP award. I thought it was going down between Stafford and May. Even with this Rams loss to the Seahawks, Matthew Stafford still had a good performance in that one. But this one, nah, man. Matthew Stafford had 3 picks. He tried to throw 2 touchdowns, the stat pad, but it wasn't enough. And the Falcons, oh boy. Too little, too late, Falcons. You should have found a way to beat the Panthers. I'll just put it that way. And for the Rams now sitting at 11-5, they'll probably beat the Cardinals next week and take out their frustrations, but this is not good for momentum headed into the playoffs. It's not. So, with that being said, now I'm going to go to the quick recap of the 3 biggest winners and 3 biggest losers. 3 biggest winners from Week 17. I'll go the 49ers, the Texans, and I'll say the Broncos. I'll say the 49ers, Texans, and the Jaguars. The 3 biggest losers from the week will have to be the Rams, for the way they collapsed, the Buccaneers, considering they continued their losing streak against the Dolphins in a game they were favorite, and the Detroit Lions for ultimately their season ending early and losing in embarrassing fashion. But with that, so now before I go off the air, we're going to take a look real quickly at the NFL playoff scenario real quickly. So we're going to see what's up right here. NFL playoff clinching scenarios. This was uploaded from ESPN about a few hours ago, so it's right on point with where we're at headed into today. So we'll take a quick look at that one real quickly. Hold on one. All right, now I'm going to share the screen with you guys. Let's take a look at what some of the scenarios are. This article was just posted via ESPN. I'll put the link in the chat if anyone wants to read it themselves. You can follow along. All right, we're obviously not going to watch that ad. So let's see, 2 more teams. All right, this is just kind of the fluff part of it. All right, now we're into it. Week 18 playoff clinching scenarios. Denver Broncos versus the Chargers. Broncos can clinch home field advantage with a win or Patriots loss to the Dolphins, plus a Jacksonville loss versus Tennessee. So Denver Broncos are win and get home field. The Houston Texans. Texans clinch the AFC South, win plus Jacksonville lost to Tennessee. That's not as likely. Jaguars clinch the number 1 seed and home field advantage. Whoa! With a win, a Broncos loss to the Chargers, which could happen. That one, plus a New England loss to the Dolphins, which that one isn't as likely. So I don't see that scenario. Now, the Jags can just win the AFC South with a win. They should be able to achieve that part, but I don't see the home field advantage part. Patriots, number 1 seed, win, and a Denver loss. They already got the AFC North, the AFC East, and then the Steelers. Simple, win or tie. You win the AFC North with a better record. Now watch it be a tie. Ravens, Sunday night, just win, and that's the only way they get in. Panthers, it's win, a tie, or Atlanta win versus New Orleans? Interesting. 49ers, let's see, NFC West. All they got to do is win. They get home field advantage. Seahawks win to get the number 1 seed. Bucks, obviously, they got to win just to win their division. So, and this is what the playoff matchups do look like currently. AFC, Bills, Patriots, Chargers, Jaguars, Texans, Steelers, Broncos, bye, but that could be subject to change. NFC would be Packers, Bears again. Probably Packers keeping the 7th seed. Eagles, Rams, Panthers, 49ers, wild card bye. That's that right there. Let's take a look at the schedule. See what games. Let's take a look at the whole schedule for this week real quickly before we go off. And if anyone's still in the chat, feel free to leave a comment or drop a like to show your support. Take a look at the schedule real quick. So Saturday, we got 2 clinching games to start. We got the Buccaneers, Panthers, the NFC South division game. Winner gets the home playoff game and probable first round elimination. 49ers, Seahawks, a night game for home field advantage in the NFC. That's definitely going to be a really good one. And then you get the Sunday matchups. Most of the early matchups are kind of the filler ones. Falcons, Saints, Bengals, Browns, Vikings, Packers, Giants, Cowboys, Jaguars, Texans, which could have something on the line based on those scenarios. Texans, Colts. Those 2 games will have an impact on who wins the division. Bills, Jets, Bears, Lions, not that significant now. But it could have an effect on the Bears seeding, along with some of the other NFC games. But then you get Broncos, Chargers, we talked about. Raiders, Kansas City, nothing. Rams, Cardinals, nothing really. Patriots, we talked about that. Eagles, Washington, nothing really on the – don't be surprised if the Eagles rest their starters. And then Steelers, Ravens, AFC North on the line. So that's the lineup right there for Week 18. So we just got to wait and see what happens. I'll talk about that more with Agent Warrior X, my co-host on NFL Pick'ems tonight. So with that being said, everyone, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the 3-Point Blitz. It's the final episode of 2025. It's been an awesome journey. We've had 41 episodes since we started this 42 weeks ago. I took 1 week off in the summer, but hey, over the past 42 weeks, this has been an awesome journey doing the 3-Point Blitz, talking about football and basketball. Had some fun episodes, such as the pilot episode to get my feet wet with this. Episode 18, where I did it live with Coach Ed Glamney. The episodes in June around the NBA Finals were awesome. When we had Art Koo and company in the chat. And then, throughout NFL season, it's been fun coming on here doing the weekly recaps. And we're just going to keep that going into 2026. Now, by next week, we will do the Week 18 recap. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs. And then from there, the format will change a little bit. We'll talk once we get to the playoffs. We'll be doing each follow-up episode recapping the playoff games and throwing some more NBA content in there. So as we get to the playoffs, as the NFL season winds down, we will get some more NBA content thrown in this as well, folks. So stay tuned for that. That's all I got for you for now. You'll catch me later tonight. Agent Warrior X, NFL Pick'ems, Week 18 tonight. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, it's your boy Nicky Stees signing off. Catch y'all later.